Good evening, everybody. Vikram, if you could also turn on your video. Welcome, everybody, to the fourth edition of the IvyCamp Ventures Imagine series. As a little bit of background to those of you who are new to our series, we launched this last year primarily to open up a forum for debate and discussion on various topical issues of interest to this ecosystem. This has given an opportunity for our network to engage with global leaders in business, policy, finance, and entrepreneurship on a number of topics and help become, creative and create new opportunities in solving different challenges. At IvyCap Ventures, we have been working hard to build a strong entrepreneurial ecosystem across the education institutions of our country, like the IITs, IIMs, and we've been working closely with them to do so. And we're very proud to partner with IIT Delhi to present this next series of the webinar to focus specifically on skills and areas that one needs to build along their path to becoming a successful entrepreneur. And to that end, we believe that bringing together the alumni community across different walks of life is a core ingredient towards this. And to that end, we have organized this set of webinars inviting the IIT Delhi Distinguished Alumni awardees, leading IIT Delhi academia, entrepreneurs, technologists to discuss various topics and bring together their perspectives for entrepreneurs. In this first series of this webinar, we will focus on some of the practical financial skills we believe all entrepreneurs need in their repertoire. And we will be following this up every month with webinars related to business skills, managing setbacks, dealing with customers, and many more. A quick note on today's format before I introduce our panelists. The webinar itself is scheduled for 60 minutes. We're targeting maybe 35, 40 minutes of a discussion. And then we will open it up to Q&A for the attendees. Any questions you have along the way, please submit those on the chat along with your name, and we will share them with our panelists. We're looking forward to a good discussion. And with that, I'd like to introduce our panelists. Our first panelist is Mr. Vikram Gupta. He is an IIT Delhi 2020 Distinguished Alumni Awardee. He is the founding and managing partner at IvyCamp Ventures Advisors Private Limited. He founded IvyCamp Ventures in 2011 with a vision to leverage the global alumni ecosystem to foster entrepreneurship in India and identify and invest in high growth business entrepreneurs who have the potential to be market leaders in the area. IvyCamp also created a unique give back program to share part of its profits back with the educational system in our country to focus on entrepreneurship. We also launched the IvyCamp platform as an engagement platform for the alumni across the globe, and we built a network of domain experts, entrepreneurs, investors, accelerators, institutes, corporates to create new and unique engagements between these groups and to add value. So welcome, Vikram. I'd also like to introduce our second panelist, Professor Smita Kashiramka, who is Assistant Professor in Finance Department at IIT Delhi. She has more than 9 years of academic experience, along with some corporate experience in the insurance industry. Her areas of interest include accounting, the financial system, corporate restructuring, financial management, and she's published a number of papers, both in national and international journals. Welcome, Professor Smita, and thank you both for being on this panel. Before we dig into very specific questions around the financial aspects, since this is the first webinar of this series, I wanted to give you each 2 minutes, starting with you, Vikram, to just share your thoughts on how students can leverage value from the institutes and alumni on their entrepreneurial path. So a couple of minutes, you, Vikram, and then Professor Smita, before we kind of dig into our specific topic. Over to you, Vikram.
Thanks, Anju. Thanks, Professor Smita. It's great to be on the same panel with you. Really looking forward to the next hour or so. So yeah, I think what I would like to say here, first of all, since I think we're talking within the IIT. I think most of the people I understand are participating from IIT community, and majority could be IIT Delhi. But I think the interesting part I would like to highlight here is that um entrepreneurship, has evolved and matured over the last 10 years to an amazing heights. In fact, when you look at what's happening across campuses, whether it's IIT Bombay, Delhi, Kanpur, Madras, Kharagpur, the core IITs, and of course other IITs as well, and of course IIMs as well. It's very interesting to see how entrepreneurs, are really building their mindset very early on, and some of them are even focusing on their entrepreneurial ventures while studying in their early years of college. So which is very encouraging. Of course, we've seen emergence of the e-cells, the entrepreneurship cells across IITs, and some of these are more active than others. And we've also seen emergence of research parks like at IIT Madras, IIT Bombay is building one. Now IIT Delhi is, of course, working on a school of entrepreneurship and a school of AI, and all these initiatives are actually very, very positive, and really working towards improving the skill sets of entrepreneurs further to really encourage more entrepreneurs. And of course, I'm proud to say that, when we look at the overall entrepreneur kind of ecosystem and the backgrounds of the entrepreneurs, for some reason, there's something unique coming out of IIT Delhi, where we've seen actually large number of unicorns coming out of IIT Delhi, or even entrepreneurs who created the most value. The statistics is very, very encouraging. So I think there's something unique that's happening there. So, kudos to, the students themselves and the professors, like Professor Smita. There's a lot of work going on in the background. So very excited to actually work with such good quality entrepreneurs.
Thanks, Vikram. Professor Smith, I would love to hear like some preliminary comments from you, your perspective from academia.
Thank you, Dr. Anju and Mr. Vikram. It's a privilege and honor to be over here as a part of this series of talks. And it's a very, very interesting and a very important, topic, looking at entrepreneurship. And when we look at the ecosystem, especially in an emerging market like India, there has, of course, been a growing trend and emphasis in terms of, inculcating that thought process in terms of building such systems that promote the growth of entrepreneurial ventures in the country. And it has come not only, I mean, there's a multi-pronged strength which is being seen in this setup at the moment, wherein we see the academic institutions like ours, who are creating their own set of skills and creating those platforms wherein students and different communities, we are trying to help them out to come up with ideas that can be taken to the next level of commercialization. And I think that is where your organization and the thought that has come through the Ivy camp is going to take those, at least some of those ideas, to the next level. So in fact, we at IIT Delhi also, we have started a program, minor degree in entrepreneurship, looking at the relevance and importance of this subject. And we all know that this is one area which is going to create, which is going to revolutionize the way the business works, and the contribution in terms of the entrepreneurs in taking into account the resources and taking the risk, which is of course inherent in organizations, and at least in the startups, is going to make the difference and take, in fact, a country like India to the next level. So I'm really excited to be a part of this journey in whatever way. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks so much. No, that's really encouraging and good to hear. And I definitely agree with what you said, Vikram, that a lot more entrepreneurs and startups are coming up while students are still in college. There's a lot more support from the ecosystem. To dig in now a little bit into our very specific topic around financial skills, typically that's not something that, entrepreneurs, even young students tend to focus on. But if you look at it, it's all about funding and getting money and getting out there. And that's where these skills seem to be kind of tested. It's not part of what somebody typically thinks is, it's something I need in my repertoire. Everybody wants a great idea and let's work to get it and execute it. And the financials tend to get, pushed back. So just to start it off, Vikram, you as an investor, as an entrepreneur yourself, what are the basic skill sets you think every entrepreneur needs to like really build and have with them in their back pocket when they're thinking about this?
Yeah, so I think the very fundamental skill set they need. I mean, and it's a very important question. Sometimes get asked is like, are entrepreneurs made or are they born? Is it the DNA, or is it the environment? And I think I personally believe it's a combination of various things. And of course, the engineering education systems actually focus very specifically on training students in certain aspects. Of course, there is some financial aspects that covered more from project financing perspective in certain courses. But I think when it comes to uh, the overall skills required, I think an entrepreneur typically needs to ideally have a combination of various skills. And I would say financial skills is one part of the equation. One needs to understand how to work in teams, how to deal with difficult situations, how to market your product. Of course, you also need specific technical skills as well when it comes to building your product or making your product better than competition. You need to have a lot of awareness about the market. You need to understand how the bigger picture economics play, or therefore you need to understand the economy side of it in terms of how the economics plays out. So I would say if somebody has like a capsule understanding of, let's say, subjects like finance, economics, organization behavior, teamwork, and marketing. And I think it doesn't have to be like a deep kind of understanding. I mean, typically, some shorter courses could do for entrepreneurs who are like, very eager to just go and implement their ideas. I think as long as they get exposure to these areas, they would do very well. And I've seen that, in fact, I was talking to Binny Bansal and Sachin Bansal about, I mean, they never went to an MBA school, right? So, and it was one of the things even they were talking about, and especially specifically Binny, in fact, they talk about, how can we really improve or look at the entire course curriculum in such a way that we are able to integrate some of these courses into our curriculum. But of course there are various ways to look at it, but people who want to take entrepreneurship can then go on that path. So I think you get hit when your organization grows so fast like Flipkart has grown, right? I mean, they wouldn't even have realized, with the space with which the company grew. And imagine, at some point they were handling people which were twice their age, and were maybe 3 times more their experience. And managing such people is not easy. I mean, you really need to have that level of maturity,
Yeah.
and you don't know who's going to come and tell you something and assume that you understood what they're saying, or somebody's trying to explain something to you and may take advantage of you because you may not really understand the key issues. But I think of course people who are smart enough, they will pick up these things on their own. I think if it is provided in a structured way, it makes a huge difference.
And Professor Smith, from your perspective, from a teaching perspective, how are you, at teaching, bringing some of these skill sets? Because even when we were at college, finance was not really part of the regular curriculum. So is that being introduced? You also mentioned something about the entrepreneurship course. So could you suggest to talk a little bit about, what are some of the basic skill sets you're helping some of these students build now differently from, how these were conducted in the past?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Anju. So I think Mr. Vikram has put up very well in terms of the skills that we look forward to in terms of having a, at least, to run a venture, successfully. And it's not just the financial skills, but of course, it includes, your behavioral aspects, your soft skills, your capability to generate resources, your networking aspects. So all those things are there, but yet, what I would just like to say one thing, when we talk of the financial skills, it's something like, for a layman, it's something like, salt in food, right? So if you're not getting your finances and your numbers right, so, it just doesn't taste the way it should
Yeah.
be. So I think that's essential. And having basic, understanding, when we are looking at, okay, so the first part, if I look at in terms of, how we are trying to, because I talked of, we have launched a program on, the entrepreneurial, entrepreneurship, minor in entrepreneurship. So we have included, courses which look at, building the aspects of accounting and, financial management, because reading through your financial statements and understanding what is your asset and what's your liability, how you are going to raise the funds and how you are going to apply those funds, and how that is going to be projected in the form of your future. Again, maybe I'm going to go into core, the terms in finance, which may go a little overboard. So I'll try to keep it a little simple. So, but yes, we are trying to, have, of course, those courses, core courses are there. Besides that, because it's about, bringing up ideas and taking them, to the next level, basically,
Mm.
through the ideation. And so we are having courses which typically involve a lot of people from the industry, venture capitalists, and the experts like you, who can be a part of the training, the training process, in terms of understanding the financial part, communicating it with the, prospective, investors, so that they are able to understand what the students are trying to say, and how you can actually convert it into a workable idea. So ideation is there, the teaming is there, so all these related, subjects, and relevant subjects have been incorporated in the program. So we have just launched it, and I'm sure it's going to, go a long way in terms of, taking at least some of those, students and some of their ideas to the next level.
Yeah.
So yes. So
Um, so Vikram, I mean, you come across so many kind of business plans on a daily basis. Interact with so many entrepreneurs. What are the most common, I would say, the top two, three skills you see missing from a financial perspective? Like just obvious pitfalls, some of these entrepreneurs run into.
So I think, I mean, to be honest with you, the entrepreneurs themselves, if they do not understand finance or the core part of finance, is not the first thing we look for. We don't look
Mm.
for the fact that do they understand finance or not. So the first thing we look for is how passionate are they about their idea? How passionate are they about solving the problem and to solve? And do they or are they doing this for a reason which they're passionate about, and things like those, and how much risk they have taken, right?
Mm.
So and when we make that assessment, we look for their maturity levels, and we tend to see, do they understand, and the financial skills actually come during the discussions about the business plan and the
Mm.
projected financials that they show. And there, significant part of that is actually linked to the assumptions that they make in their business models. What are the assumptions they made with respect to their revenues, with respect to their, major cost factors, and how they're looking at raising equity over time, and are they considering at some point raising debt? So what kind of financing options they're looking for? Therefore, one just looks at the overall maturity level with respect to the assumptions made in the business model, and therefore many times it so happens it translates to, therefore, sometimes into a valuation discussion, because typically there is this argument about, and there's always a very, very different points of views around how they should value their company, and depending on who they got their guidance from. And if they got their guidance from someone who's purely only a financial person, who only understands financial sheets and nothing else, then they would have come with a model saying, hey, I've done my DCF, and my DCF model shows, my net present value of X. So therefore, this is my valuation of the business. Now, at times it becomes a little difficult to communicate when you're talking purely based on the numbers, and trying to justify that, valuation is not just a function of the the business plan. Of course, it is dependent on the business plan, and it is dependent on how you're looking at your growth in terms of top line, bottom line, at what stage you're going to make profits, what are your gross margins, what are your net margins, etc., unit economics. So a lot of it goes down to very specifics around, the margins and the top line, etc. But at the same time, I think it's very important that when it comes down to the valuation discussion, it's also about a negotiation process which goes on between two people, because both these people may come with a certain set of objectives. One, like from an investor perspective, when you have a objective maybe to invest for a 4-year period. So effectively, you have to keep that thing in mind to begin with when you're building a financial model, that, hey, this is an investor who is going to invest 25 crores with me, is looking for a minimum 5x over a 4-year period. So they're looking for about 125 crore return. So therefore, let me kind of see whether, over that period of time, if this is a stake they have in the company, whether my company is going to deliver that kind of value at that stage. So it's not just about, what your financials are going to look like today. It's about how your financials are going to look like 4 to 5 years from now. Therefore, you have to have the ability to forecast the kind of environment that's going to happen at that time, how your product is going to stay competitive, what kind of teams you're going to have at that time. So there's a lot will come into execution. So there are multiple factors. So as long as you actually factor those things and able to convince your investor that, look, I have analyzed everything and I understand what you're talking about, and despite that, I'm going to give you so much returns, and then it kind of becomes a very interesting discussion with the investors.
True, very right. And Professor Smitha, like for students at college that are currently kind of, looking to become entrepreneurs or start their business, or even kind of alums who are, doing this, is there some kind of support they can get from the professors, from the departments to help them work through some of this stuff? Is there something in place for them to get support, for example, in these financial areas from the institute itself?
Okay, so yes, we do have avenues, for supporting ideas. So there's a separate body called as FIT in IIT, which supports, incubations and does some amount of, at least some minimum amount of some funding that comes. And besides, yes, we have, incubation center as well, wherein at least I'm aware of few of the companies that have, been, helped, and, in terms of pushing forward and getting some financial support, and as well as, and in fact, many of our faculty members are, from different departments. They are engaged and they are acting as mentors, to these budding entrepreneurs, in terms of supporting and taking the ideas, fructifying them. Especially I know of a faculty from the CBME. She's working in the domain of helping generate tangible products from the stubble. So I think a lot of so of course there has to be a symbiotic relationship. Of course, the person seeking that support, and of course, getting in touch with the right person who would be able to give you the guidance in that direction is really very important. Secondly, one thing, because you were discussing, I just thought I'll put that across. We were discussing about the pitfalls. Why maybe
Mm,
some ideas are just not getting forward, or most of the ideas, what we read, they just don't take it to the ground and to the next level. So one thing that I really find missing as a teacher, is the reading habit, amongst the
mm,
students. I mean, that's really required when we are talking of what. Mr. Vikram was saying in terms of having a perspective, 5 years valuation, and how you are looking at your returns, moving ahead, and that's what is going to attract the investors. But that all can come only when students and of course entrepreneurs, they develop that habit, because most of our audience over here are students, right? So that's a message that I would like to convey, that please, I mean, that's very, very extremely important. We are living in a dynamic environment, and we just can't afford to ignore the environment in which we are operating.
mm.
Yeah. So
I want to address a couple of the questions that have come in. So one of the question is, Vikram, I'd like to start with you, and then Professor Smita, please add to it. Is how has the alumni network kind of helped you along the way, and what has its influence been in your path to success so far?
So I am a very, very strong believer of leveraging alumni networks. In fact, our entire thesis of IvyCamp is actually built on the foundation of the alumni networks. And this is one thing which I've realized, that any business for that matter, whether it is a financial services business or even a manufacturing business, or whatever business it is, you need to build very powerful relationships. You need to build customers, you need to build relationships and find investors, you need to find right talent to hire. And there is a huge level of element of trust, and especially in a venture capital business like ours. If you to go and set up a fund where you need to build an ecosystem and a network approach to help entrepreneurs, to look for right entrepreneurs to begin with, and on the other side to get the right investors to come and invest with you. The trust is very fundamental aspect which has to come into that play. And when you go and meet someone who's at a influential position, and when you're discussing at a professional level, and all of a sudden when you figure out that that person is also from your alma mater, all of a sudden the tone of the discussions change, the way the discussions happen change completely. And that was the basic thesis with which we started IvyCamp. So the first year itself, we reached out to almost 65,000 alumni across the entire IIT alumni ecosystem. And it was amazing to see the kind of responses we got, whether they were entrepreneurs or investors or people wanting to be mentors on a platform. And I think that is something I would encourage every entrepreneur, even if you're not an entrepreneur, if you're even looking for a job, and even if you're in first year, right from the first year of your college, you should start building relationships with your alumni ecosystem, because they are the people who would be the most easily approachable, and the people who would be more willing to give their time to talk to you, and with experienced people. So I think we very strongly believe in this concept of networking through alumni.
And Professor Smith, I'd like to get your thoughts also, but add a couple of more kind of specific, questions that have come through related to this. So one is, a couple of people have asked that, they're just freshers, where should they start if they wanted to start looking at, financial skills? You said read, but are there, what do they read? There are a couple of people who said, we've just started entrepreneurship. What should we read? Are there opportunities for students to work on projects with maybe some startups to help, get a practical aspect to these skill sets?
okay. So when you are looking at starting to read, of course, some avenues which are now readily available, because the government of India has also uh, years back it started off with the Startup India campaign. So if you log on to the website, there are a lot of courses which are available for the which are dedicated for the entrepreneurial ecosystem, basically, for the people who are at different stages of their business development. So that's one way to look at it. And of course there are a lot of courses which are available, which can be done by the students, and of course the others as well, to hone their skills on the financial aspects, and learning the skill sets which are required to put the numbers at least in place to some extent. And of course, and many a times, one more thing, that I would like to add is that many a times, students do come back and they say that, it's difficult, finance is just really not coming across. So because it's something which is imperative, you just can't do away with. So then have someone, who can help you out, because the way, businesses are, developing, and the compliance and the, the regulatory ecosystem is growing, and it is becoming more stringent, and at the same point of time it is trying to ensure bring in more discipline amongst the business community. I think that is required. I mean, you either you develop it yourself, or you get it outsourced. You have someone who can, do it for you.
Are there opportunities for students to get involved in some projects, let's say, with startups or things like that, to kind of, build some of these things in a practical sense? Do those opportunities come up at the institute?
So of course, yes, as I told you, there are several of I think students who work with professors. Of course, projects are an integral part of the curriculum as well, right? And so many of these students, they get, associated with professors, and they get an hands-on experience in terms of working with them on their own ventures, for that matter. And so that is of course one way of doing it.
Okay.
But yes, but then that has to be sought, if you're looking at something, organized platform, so I think we can that's a good idea, and we can definitely look at, developing that kind of platform, wherein a link can be created between just to venture the just to nurture the thought process and
Yeah.
the learning of the students.
So one other interesting question, I guess, to both of you, people are asking, we've just joined college, we're young, we don't know whether entrepreneurship is for us. Is there a way to try it out? Like, how do we know whether this is for us? Is there a way to try this and that? And, how would you, what would you suggest? What would your advice be to them?
So I think I would say that, yeah, you're right. At times, when you're very early in your age, in the first year student or second year student, you really have no clue, what it is all about, right? So I would always encourage people to find mentors at very early age, and you should shamelessly reach out to people. And I can tell you that I've seen people just write emails to Ratan Tata and getting responses, and actually then having a one-on-one call. And they just wrote those emails out of the blue. And it's just that they made that effort, which means that, be ambitious and reach out to people you look up to, and see if you can try and, get their time, and try to make them as your mentors with a structured kind of time commitment from their side. And I can tell you that quite a few alumni who would be very, very excited to help out. And if you do that, then you realize that, people will challenge you. They will ask you questions around, why are you doing this, why are you not doing that? And at times, then you will start asking those questions to yourself. Am I underutilizing my potential? Because, many times you don't realize that the potential sitting with you is much higher than you're actually utilizing. Ideally you should be able to challenge yourself, but I think in early years of your college, you need somebody else to challenge you. So I think that's the reason you need somebody experienced enough to actually ask those questions and challenge you. And that's when you start discovering that your potential is much higher than what you're utilizing. And that's when, you will start actually going and doing something in that area. So that's my suggestion.
Professor Smita, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think in the early years, of course, when the pockets are kind of empty, and you just can't afford to, spend And the opportunity cost, you don't even realize, even now people do not realize the importance of the opportunity cost of the money and time that they have. So it is always better, yes, to get associated, but yes, till the time I still agree with what Mr. Vikram said, that it's better to get some experience and in terms of getting associated with someone, and then venturing into the water, rather than burning the fingers right at the first go. So many a times, because if you look at academic literature, we do research in terms of we are doing it in terms of entrepreneurial failures. So overconfidence is one thing which has killed so many ideas, and hence it is I think imperative that you look at associating with someone and then learning these skills and then probably trying to do it yourself.
A kind of like a related question is, from somebody, I have an idea, and I'm like, what do I do next? There's somebody when I'm at a college that I can talk to. I mean, Vikram, obviously you mentioned kind of a mentor, but like, this is not a huge college which has a huge kind of alumni base. So what do I do? Like, I'm not really sure. We don't have a huge network. Do you have some suggestions of, what can I do?
You know, people get ideas every day, right? I mean, you know, and of course, one of the biggest challenges you have with ideas is that, what you might be thinking as an idea, as a business idea, is probably just a problem that you faced in one particular instance. And the moment you start thinking, whether this is a problem being faced by, larger number of people, is when you start realizing that, well, this is a good idea, maybe to solve my particular problem in that situation. But it was probably not a big enough problem, which needs to be translated into a business. On the other hand, uh, you know, many times you think of that idea and then you just think that, yeah, you know, this was a good idea, but I'm sure somebody else is doing it, so why bother? So there are both kind of cases there. I would say that, always go and validate that first, and that's the reason, I was talking about talking to the right mentors. And, typically always the first set of people you should be talking to are the people you're the most comfortable with, right? And this could be your parents, your siblings, your relatives, your friends, or somebody who's doing well somewhere else, or somebody who understands, to have just kind of that debate that, look, I'm thinking of this, I believe that there is a lot of potential here, what do you think about it? And initial set of those people, will give you, and I can tell you that many times it so happens that, it's quite possible, and I have seen it from my own experience, that people you love the most, or people who care for you the most, many times they will shoot down an idea very early on, an idea which may have otherwise have had a strong potential. My own brother, who's also from IIT Delhi, incidentally, I never discuss an idea with him if I have to implement an idea, because I know his first reaction is, it will not work, so he's always telling me, shoot me down, forget it, this is not going to work, right? I mean, he's completely on the other side when it comes to risk taking, right? So it's good to talk to even such people, but ultimately follow your own heart, and ultimately follow your own dream, and don't just restrict yourself to one or two people, talk to more people, and validation from multiple people. So I think that's very important.
Okay. Another question, Professor Smith, there's a lot going on kind of in the fintech and innovations and startups. What are some of the innovations or some of the ongoing research you think is leading to more innovation in the financial arena from a university perspective?
Dr. Anju, can you please repeat the question? I think I lost
The
it.
question is, there's a lot of innovations by startup in the fintech domain.
Right.
What is some of the kind of, cutting edge research you're seeing in academia in the financial arena?
So see, if you look at fintech space, of course it's gaining ground because it is bringing in a lot of efficiency in the financial system, and so going forward, if you look at it, of course, technology-driven solutions are going to be the most sought after, ideas. And even if I look at it from the perspective of, maybe I'm just going a little divergent from the question. So even if you look at, the initiatives of the, the government of India, it is talking about, Atmanirbhar Bharat, right? So when we are looking at even in the financial space, uh, and the kind of discussions and the way the research is flowing, we are trying to look at solutions which would, of course, leverage technology and try to provide solutions which are aligned with the larger goals of the
Mm,
economy. So that's how the the entire spectrum of, and in fact looking at even sustainability. So
mm.
these factors build in. That's how we are looking at orienting our future direction of work.
Okay, thanks. So Vikram, this relates to something you had mentioned earlier in answer to a question about, financial skills. So this is from a founder who says, what does a VC expect when they ask for a 3 to 5 year plan? I mean, we know what's coming over the next year, maybe 18 months, but after that it starts getting a little fuzzy. So what really is it that a VC would expect?
So, you're right. I mean, nobody knows what's there in the future, right? I mean, sitting in December of 2018, 2019, nobody would have expected that 2020 is going to be a washout, right? So, uh, one could not even predict the next 12 months. We're talking about 5 year plan.
Yeah.
So I think everybody knows that situations can happen in a very different ways. Nobody expected 2008 to happen in 2007, right? So, but at the same time, what we look for is you know uh, the discussion around the business plan is primarily to understand the maturity levels of the team and the entrepreneurs very clearly, because how they're looking at their specific assumptions around pricing, around volumes they're going to sell, at what cost they're going to sell, how they're going to enter new markets, how they're going to
Mm,
defend themselves against competition, what are the patents they're filing, what is the IP they're creating, therefore, what kind of marketing budgets they've created for themselves, how much they're allocating for R&D. So it's all about understanding their mindset, how they think, how they work. And, then there is a discussion around the macros, right? So the macros is around, how do they see India growing over the next 5 years, 10 years, right? So, of course, there'll be short-term blips, things will go wrong. 2008 will happen, but then, things will start coming back. 2020 will happen, then things will start coming back, right? So that's the reason we talk about a 5 year plan rather than a 1 year plan, because 1 year
mm,
can change anything, right?
mm.
So that's the reason over a 5 year period things can get averaged out, right? So when you know
Yeah.
that the Indian economy needs to grow at a certain rate to be one of the top three economies in the world, right? So you know that every effort in the government institutions is focused towards creating that environment,
Mm,
right? So therefore you have to take certain calls in terms of how this sector will do in the bigger picture, how competition will evolve, how other players will react when your solutions are launched, when you raise funding, how is the competition going to react to that. So it's a lot about how maturely you're thinking and how maturely you're going to be able to defend all the risk factors that you're going to encounter. Effectively, we're looking at all the potential risks associated with the business. There are risks
mm,
associated with the macro factors, which are beyond your control, and there are risks associated with micro factors, which are related to the team, to the product, to the your own operations, systems, and processes, and things like those. And these are in your control. So how are you going to handle things which are in your control, and how are you going to handle things which are not necessarily going to be in your control. So
mm,
if those things happen, what are your backup options? How are you
mm,
going to deal with such scenarios? So all those things are kind of, you build maybe 2 or 3 scenarios based on that. There's a conservative scenario, there's an optimistic scenario, and then
mm.
realistic scenario. So that's how you build your plan.
Okay. Um, this is a little bit more of a general question that, we haven't seen, and, I've seen this also a lot of times. We haven't seen a lot of hardware and product companies that are coming up. Why not? What's your opinion on that?
Uh, that question is for me.
Yeah, either of you.
Yeah, no, I think you're right that of course that there is a lot of focus on technology, and there is a lot of focus on scalable technologies, and and also counterintuitively, technologies get very obsolete, or get replaced very fast as well. So it is not just about technology, your attitude towards technology and your approach towards technology. So technology in itself may not be the differentiator, but how you're going to actually evolve your technology is the differentiator, right? So effectively, how you're applying your technology towards solving a particular problem, and that's why we call it consumer tech, health tech, right? Ed tech, because technology applied to different sectors and solving specific problems. So how you're actually doing that. But I think maybe you're referring to this question I was also reading, which basically talks about is we hardly see uh, any hardware product companies in your portfolio. That's not true. Actually, we do have a couple of companies, in fact, which are a combination of hardware and software. We have a company called Singularity Automation, which is an IoT company, which actually is manufacturing its own hardware now, addressing the whole automation world. Earlier, they were sourcing their hardware from China, and now with all this backlash in China, they started manufacturing their own. So, and I think more and more of that is happening with government giving incentives local manufacturing in India.
Professor Smita, for a student who's already graduated, are there courses that IIT offers through its financial department on things like valuation, financials, and stuff that people can explore signing up for?
Okay, so not in terms of the courses, but we do have a separate, a setup which is called as the continuing education program, CEP programs, wherein we offer a lot of training programs catering to different functional areas, so including valuations, finance for non-finance executives. So, of course, touching on, these different domains. So we have, all these different functional areas. So I'm not just talking about finance, but yes, if you look at, from our department, because I belong to the management department. So, we have people from the operations management, from the HROB who offer training in the domain of interpersonal behavior, negotiation, so on and so forth. So we do offer these programs, and of course during the pandemic this really got a little stuck up, but
Yeah.
yes, we do offer such programs which are catered to, of course, and these programs, some of them are open ended, wherein everyone is invited to participate, and of course some are close ended, wherein we do it for specific organizations.
And are these being offered online now?
We have in fact initiated a full scale program which wherein we are looking at offering online training programs as well. So that structure is on its way. So yes, it would fructify in your future.
Awesome. So Vikram, another question for you. Can clean tech be viable, for a new startup, or is that too early? Does it have to be an established company to go down that path?
So, by the way, that's a very good question. It's a first of all, clean tech is a very hot area in general. There is going to be a lot of funding available in this area. So, so if you're thinking of an idea for clean tech, I think you should definitely go for it. But at the same time, it could also be very capital intensive business, because clean tech, if you're talking about whether it is solar energy or wind energy or even hydro, I think the initial capital investment required are huge. Fortunately, there are a lot more debt options available in such capital heavy businesses. But even in debt options, they would look for a decent commitment from the equity investors. So therefore, it's not going to be that easy. So if you are actually thinking of an idea in this space, you should first think of less capital intensive ideas where they're more software driven rather than hardware driven ideas. And then slowly, as you start building your name in that business, start adding the other aspect when your investors or customers start getting more confidence in you. That's when you can start bringing in more capital for hardware investments.
One question for you, Professor Smitha. This is from your startup founder. So, if we wanted to work with some students in finance, how do we go about doing that? Is there somebody specific we could reach out to discuss that, or how would we approach that?
Okay, so essentially, yes, you need to reach out to the person because, of course, that communication has to be established. So, so for example, when I was with Bits Pilani earlier. I've spent almost, I did my PhD and I was a faculty for almost 8 years over there. So students used to reach out and we used to sit together and we used to work on the ideas and working on the research plans and your their basically the business plan and determining what Mr. Vikram was talking about, doing a scenario analysis, doing a sensitivity analysis in terms of worst case and pessimistic and optimistic scenarios. So that, of course, that connect has to be established. Reach out, and of course, depending on the interest, that's how we can take things forward.
Okay. We just have a few more minutes left. I just like you both to share any final thoughts you have, and attendees, if you have any other questions, feel free to share them, and we'd kind of happy to respond to them offline. Vikram, last comments, couple of minutes, feedback from you, suggestions from you to the entrepreneurs, to the network.
Yeah, so I think I would say that nobody is perfect. So never think that just because you don't have skills in a particular area, and especially in the area of finance, if you don't think you have skills in the area of finance, don't get disheartened. It's not, that will not be the reason you will not be successful, I can assure you. So I think if you are passionate about something, if you believe that you want to make a difference, and if you believe that you will work hard and you're very focused and achievement oriented, and you will be able to leverage a network of people, I think you should just go for it, and just take that call, and I can tell you that once you take that call, the path starts paving for itself, and I think you will start seeing that lot more support starts getting created on its own. And that's what I've seen as an entrepreneur myself, and I can tell you that um, everybody loves entrepreneurs, and the courage that you have to build something itself is appreciated a lot. And if you're actually trying to solve a problem, and especially if it is also in the area of impact, and I just noticed another question in that
Yeah.
mentioned, I think impact is going to be the next wave, especially if it is SDG focused or ESG focused. The SDG is becoming more prominent framework for evaluation or monitoring, tracking the impact side of business or impact side of what you're doing. So I would encourage that, think from not just making an impact in solving a particular problem, also think of making a positive impact in terms of your contribution to the society, and see how best you can make a difference in the bigger picture. So that's my you know uh, final word on this.
Thanks, Vikram. Professor Smitha, your final thoughts on, I know finance tends to be, a dry topic, it's not something that gets your kind of juices flowing unless you're really passionate about it. But just thoughts or tips for people about, what to do, how to build those up, on any last thoughts on the topic.
Yes, so as I already said, see, if you cannot master a skill, get it on board, through someone. because finance is important. You just can't do away with that. But I completely agree uh, with the fact that you need to have that perseverance. There would be times, and I have seen people, when the family members do not support your idea, wasting money and just going ahead with it. But then that toiling hard and staying attached to your idea with being practical also, at the same point of time. It just, you don't go with the overconfidence. You just be practical, be realistic. You don't be myopic in your approach. And yes, if that passion is there, your idea is really worthwhile, and you're putting all the aspects, you're trying to put those things in the correct place. And of course, having a good mentor, I think that's really really important in today's competitive scenario. So and it's a courageous task, believe me. It's a very very courageous task. So please stick on to it, and I think things would turn out to be good. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Vikram. Thank you so much, Professor Smita, for sharing thoughts, and thanks to the attendees for a great, set of questions. Really helped get this discussion going, and some really good topics to touch upon. Thank you all for your time, and stay tuned for our next webinar. Also, quickly, there were a couple of questions on how people could engage with the network, or if you don't have an alumni network, how to engage. Please feel free to reach out to us at IvyCamp. That's a lot of what we do. Connect people through our network, even if you don't have your own. If you're looking to connect with some mentors, some corporates, glad to talk to you offline. But thank you all for the great discussion, great questions. Looking forward to connect at our next webinar, and have a great evening, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Bye.
so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.